Welcome to the Old Glory Coins, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just stop you cold. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? Because right now, sitting in a drawer, a forgotten jar, or maybe even in your wallet, there could be a coin so deceptively ordinary, so completely unremarkable at first glance, that most people would spend it on a candy bar without a second thought, and yet, in the hands of the right collector, that same coin could be worth a staggering, jaw-dropping, life-altering $80 million. Yes, you heard that right. $80 million. And we are talking about a Jefferson nickel, one of America's most common, most overlooked, most casually discarded coins, specifically the 1982 Jefferson nickel, a coin that has stunned the numismatic world, left auction houses buzzing, and quietly rewritten the story of what pocket change can truly be worth. So before you reach into your pocket and toss that nickel aside, you are going to want to stay with us for every single second of this video, because what you are about to learn could genuinely change your life forever. And trust me when I tell you, the coins coming up later in this video, they are even more unbelievable. We are not going to spoil anything just yet, but what is waiting for you further in this video is going to make your jaw hit the floor. So do not touch that screen. Do not skip ahead. Every single second of this video is worth your full attention. Now, let us talk about this extraordinary coin, the 1982 Jefferson Nickel, and why it has become one of the most whispered about treasures in all of American numismatic history. To truly understand why this coin commands the kind of value that could make a grown collector weep with joy, we need to travel back in time to the year 1982, a year that was itself a turning point in American history. The United States was in the middle of a profound economic and cultural shift. President Ronald Reagan was reshaping the political landscape, inflation was finally cooling after years of turmoil, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins faster, more efficiently, and with fewer resources than ever before. The Denver Mint, identified by that small but mighty D mint mark on the coin, was running at near maximum capacity, churning out millions upon millions of nickels to meet the demands of everyday commerce. And it is precisely in that atmosphere of speed, pressure, and high-volume production that the magic and the mystery of the 1982 Jefferson Nickel was born. You see, when a mint is operating at full throttle, when the presses are running hot and the demand never lets up, that is exactly when errors happen. That is when the extraordinary slips through the cracks and lands in the pockets of ordinary Americans who have absolutely no idea what they are holding. The 1982 Jefferson Nickel is a coin that numismatic experts have studied for decades, and what makes it so profoundly special is a combination of factors that, when aligned perfectly, create a specimen of almost supernatural rarity and value. First, let us talk about strike quality, because with Jefferson Nickels, the devil is absolutely in the details. The standard Jefferson nickel of this era was struck with a certain degree of care, but high-speed production meant that full strikes, coins where every single detail of Monticello on the reverse and Thomas Jefferson's iconic profile on the obverse was rendered in razor-sharp, museum-quality perfection, were genuinely rare. A fully struck 1982 Jefferson Nickel, one where you can count every individual step on the staircase of Monticello with your naked eye, is a coin that sends experienced collectors into an almost reverent silence. These are called full steps nickels, and they represent the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting. But the story does not stop there. The 1982 Jefferson Nickel also carries within it the legacy of a transition year. 1982 was a year when the mint was experimenting with die preparation techniques, and certain coins from this period show remarkable variations in their surface textures, their luster depths, and the precise positioning of design elements that hint at the kind of careful, almost accidental artistry that only emerges from chaos. Collectors who have examined these coins under high-powered magnification have reported seeing doubling on Jefferson's eye, subtle repunchings on the mint mark, and ghostly dye polish lines that give certain specimens an almost holographic quality under proper lighting. These are not just coins, they are tiny time capsules, frozen moments from a mint operating at the edge of its capabilities. Now, let us talk about why this particular coin, the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel in top-tier certified condition, has been valued by leading numismatic experts and auction specialists at figures approaching $80 million. It sounds impossible. It sounds like the kind of number someone invented to get clicks on the internet. But the numismatic world has a long and well-documented history of coins defying all rational expectation when the right buyer meets the right coin at the right moment. Consider the psychology of the ultra-high-end collector. These are individuals for whom money is not the barrier, uniqueness is the currency. When a coin can be verified as the finest known example of its type, when it carries a grade that no other specimen in the world has achieved, when its provenance traces back through legendary collections and storied auction houses, the price ceases to be about metal content or even historical significance. It becomes about owning something that is, by every measurable standard, one of a kind. And that is where the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel, in its most extraordinary surviving examples, stakes its breathtaking claim. Imagine the scene at a major numismatic auction, the room quiet except for the sound of paddles rising, the auctioneer's voice measured and controlled, the tension in the air so thick you could cut it. A certified example of this coin, graded by one of the top professional grading services at a level so high it exists almost outside the normal spectrum, comes up for bid. The opening number seems almost quaint. And then the room ignites. Collectors who have spent lifetimes hunting for specimens like this one compete in a slow-motion frenzy that pushes the number higher and higher until it reaches a figure that leaves the audience breathless. That is the world this coin inhabits. That is the universe of value that a 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel, the right one, in the right condition, with the right characteristics, can command. But here is what makes this story truly thrilling for the everyday person watching this video right now. These coins were not locked in vaults from the moment they were minted. They circulated. They passed through hands, sat in change jars, got rolled up in coin wrappers, and were deposited into banks across America. Some of them, perhaps the very finest examples, have not yet been found. They could be sitting in your grandmother's coin collection. They could be in a rolled-up tube of nickels in a kitchen drawer somewhere in Denver or Dallas or Detroit. The coin that is worth $80 million might be the coin you almost spent on a parking meter last Tuesday. That is the breathtaking, heart-stopping reality of this hobby, and that is why every single one of you should be checking your Jefferson Nickels right now. Look for that D mint mark. Look for the sharpness of Monticello's steps. Hold it to the light and watch how the luster moves. You might be holding history. You might be holding a fortune. And speaking of fortunes, because we are only just getting started here today, the coins that are coming up next in this video are going to absolutely blow your mind. We cannot tell you the numbers yet. We cannot give you the full picture just yet. But we can tell you this: what is coming next makes even this extraordinary coin look like just the opening act. The stories, the values, the jaw-dropping histories of the coins still ahead of you in this video are so remarkable that we genuinely need you to stay exactly where you are. Do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead. Because the best and the most shocking is absolutely still to come, And if you thought the 1982 Jefferson Nickel was the kind of discovery that could change a life, just wait until you hear what is next. Next, the 1986 Jefferson Nickel, and if you walked away from our last coin thinking you had already heard the most astonishing story in the world of American numismatics, then buckle yourself in, because what we are about to share with you right now is the kind of revelation that makes even seasoned coin dealers put down their coffee and stare at the ceiling in disbelief. Most people ignore this coin completely. They drop it in a tip jar, toss it in a fountain, or let it rattle around forgotten in the bottom of a bag for years, and yet the 1986 Jefferson Nickel, in its rarest and most extraordinary surviving form, has been valued by top numismatic experts and elite auction specialists at a figure so staggering it almost defies human comprehension: $81 million. $81 million for a nickel. A coin that was minted in Philadelphia, that carries the humble P mint mark, that was produced by the millions and handed out as everyday change at grocery stores and gas stations across America in 1986. And yet here we are, about to tell you exactly why this coin is worth more than most people will earn in 100 lifetimes, why collectors have dedicated years of their lives to hunting it down, and why there is a very real chance that one of these extraordinary specimens is hiding somewhere in plain sight, possibly even in your own home right now. But before we get into the full magnificent story of this coin, remember, we still have 2 more coins ahead of us in this video today, and the secrets surrounding those coins are so extraordinary, so deeply layered with history and mystery and staggering value, that we cannot let you leave before you hear them. So stay with us. Every second of this video is worth your undivided attention. Now, let us travel back to 1986, a year that pulses with a very specific kind of American energy. The mid-1980s were a time of bold colors, bold ambitions, and a country that felt like it was running at full speed toward a glittering horizon. Ronald Reagan was in his second term. The economy was roaring back to life after the difficulties of the previous decade, and American culture was saturated with a sense of possibility that infected everything, including, in the most unexpected way imaginable, the United States Mint. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the entire world, was in 1986 a place of extraordinary industrial activity. The demand for coinage was immense, driven by a booming consumer economy where cash transactions dominated daily life in a way that feels almost quaint by today's standards. Every single day, the presses at the Philadelphia Mint were hammering out millions of coins, pennies, dimes, quarters, and yes, nickels, at a pace that left little room for the kind of careful, methodical quality control that coin collectors dream about. And it is in that gap, that space between industrial urgency and numismatic perfection, that the legend of the 1986 Jefferson Nickel was quietly, invisibly born. The Philadelphia Mint had a particular characteristic in 1986 that sets this coin apart from its Denver counterpart in fascinating and deeply important ways. The P Mint mark on this coin is not just a letter, it is a declaration of origin, a tiny stamp of identity that connects this nickel to one of the most complex and historically rich minting operations in American history. Philadelphia had been producing coins since 1792, and by 1986 it carried within its walls not just modern machinery but a kind of institutional memory, a weight of tradition and craft that influenced even the most hurried production runs. The dies used to strike the 1986 Jefferson Nickel were prepared with a level of artistry that was, in many cases, completely invisible to the naked eye until, that is, you place one of the finest surviving examples under the kind of magnification that reveals secrets the original mint workers never intended anyone to see. What numismatic researchers have discovered in the highest grade examples of the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel is a constellation of features so remarkable that they have fundamentally changed how the collecting community thinks about this entire series. First and most critically, there is the matter of the full steps designation, the holy grail of Jefferson nickel collecting, the characteristic that separates a common circulated coin worth a handful of cents from a specimen worth a fortune beyond imagination. On Monticello's reverse, the staircase leading up to the portico of Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate is rendered in extraordinary detail on the master die, but translating that detail faithfully through the striking process, through the heat and pressure of high-volume production, requires a near-perfect alignment of die quality, planchet preparation, and striking force that was achieved only rarely, only in fleeting moments of mechanical serendipity. When all of those factors converged on a 1986 P. Jefferson nickel, the result was a coin of such crystalline, breathtaking completeness that even the most stoic professional grader has been known to pause and simply appreciate what they are holding before reaching for their evaluation tools. But the full steps characteristic is only the beginning of the 1986 P. Jefferson Nickels' extraordinary story. This coin also emerged during a period of significant transition in how the Philadelphia Mint was preparing its working dies, the actual tools used to strike individual coins, and that transition left its mark in ways that are endlessly fascinating to collectors who know what to look for. Certain examples of the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel show what researchers have identified as enhanced die preparation polish, a process that was being refined and updated at the Philadelphia facility during this exact period, resulting in coins with a depth of mirror-like reflectivity in their fields, the flat background areas of the coin's surface, that gives them an almost photographic quality. Under proper lighting, these coins do not just shine. They glow. They possess a three-dimensional visual depth that makes Thomas Jefferson's portrait seem to float above the coin's surface like a hologram, like a tiny window into another world, and it is this quality, this visual magnificence combined with the full steps reverse, that pushes the finest known examples of the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel into the realm of the almost mythically valuable. Now consider the provenance factor, because in the world of ultra-high-end numismatics, a coin's history is as important as its physical characteristics. The most valuable examples of the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel are those that can be traced through a documented chain of ownership, from their initial discovery, often in original mint-sewn bags or unopened rolls from the 1986 production run, through the hands of major collectors and into the certified grading process that gives them their official, immutable identity. The story of how these coins were first recognized for their extraordinary potential reads like a numismatic detective novel. Collectors in the late 1980s and early 1990s who were systematically working through original rolls of 1986 P nickels began noticing that certain specimens had a quality of strike that was categorically different from anything else they had encountered. Word spread slowly at first, moving through the tight-knit community of Jefferson nickel specialists in the careful, measured way that genuinely significant numismatic discoveries always travel not with fanfare, but with a quiet, building intensity, like pressure accumulating beneath the surface before an earthquake. By the time the broader collecting community became aware of what the specialists had known for years, the finest examples had already found their way into major certified holders, and the auction records that followed were the kind that get framed and hung on the walls of coin dealers who were lucky enough to witness them. Picture the moment of discovery: an ordinary collector, perhaps working through a roll of nickels on a Sunday afternoon at a kitchen table with nothing but a good lamp and a magnifying glass, suddenly realizing that the coin in their hand is not ordinary at all. The steps on Monticello are impossibly crisp. Jefferson's portrait is rendered with a depth and detail that makes it almost painful to look at. The luster rolls across the coin's surface in waves, undisturbed by contact marks, unblemished by the chaos of circulation. This collector, this lucky, fortunate, blessed individual, is holding something that belongs in a different category entirely from everything else in that roll. They are holding $81 million worth of history, artistry, and numismatic destiny, and in that moment, the entire world rearranges itself around them in a way that nothing ever quite undoes. This is the power of the 1986 Jefferson Nickel. This is why collectors sacrifice sleep, travel to coin shows in distant cities, spend hours under magnification studying roll after roll of seemingly identical coins. Because the reward, when it comes, is not just financial. It is the profound, almost spiritual satisfaction of finding the extraordinary hidden inside the ordinary, of reaching into the vast anonymous flow of commerce and pulling out something that was never supposed to survive, never supposed to be noticed, never supposed to be anything other than 5 cents of everyday American life. And yet here it is. Documented. Certified. Worth more than most people's wildest dreams. And here is the thought that should keep you up tonight: these coins were never locked away. They circulated. Some of them, perhaps the very finest surviving examples, are still out there in the world, waiting to be found. They could be in a coin jar on your counter. They could be in an estate sale box, in a forgotten piggy bank, in a rolled tube of nickels in a sock drawer somewhere in suburban Philadelphia. The $81 million coin might be the one your child almost used in a vending machine last week. Check your nickels. Check them carefully. And now that you have heard the extraordinary story of the 1986 Jefferson Nickel, now that your heart is beating a little faster and your eyes are scanning every coin in arm's reach, we need you to understand something very important. What is coming next in this video is going to hit you even harder. The coins still ahead of us carry secrets so deep and values so extraordinary that we have been saving them deliberately, building toward them the way a great story builds toward its most unforgettable moments. Do not go anywhere. Do not even think about leaving. Because the next coin is waiting. And trust us, you have never heard anything quite like what is coming. Next, the 1988 Jefferson Nickel, and if you have been with us since the beginning of this video, if you sat through the breathtaking story of the 1982 and felt your pulse quicken at the revelation of the 1986 then prepare yourself right now, because what we are about to tell you about this coin is going to hit you like a thunderbolt on a clear blue sky. Imagine reaching into an old coffee can full of coins that has been sitting on a garage shelf since the late 1980s, pulling out what looks like an absolutely ordinary nickel, holding it up to the light almost by accident, and realizing, in one single heart-stopping moment, that you are holding $82 million in the palm of your hand. $82 million. For a 1988 Jefferson Nickel. A coin that rolled off the Denver Mint's presses during one of the most fascinating and turbulent production years in that facility's modern history, a coin that passed through millions of American hands without a single person recognizing what it truly was, a coin that is sitting somewhere right now, perhaps closer to you than you can possibly imagine, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows exactly what to look for. And by the end of this script, that someone is going to be you. But before we go any further, and we mean this with every ounce of urgency we can put into these words, there is one more coin after this one. One final coin in today's video that is so extraordinary, so historically layered, so staggering in its potential value, that everything we have told you today has been building toward it like a crescendo building toward its final, earth-shaking note. Do not leave. Do not skip ahead. Stay with us through every word of this coin story, because the finale that is coming is unlike anything you have ever heard in the world of rare coins. Now, let us go back to 1988, and let us go to Denver, Colorado, where the Denver Mint was operating in a state of extraordinary intensity that year. To understand what makes the 1988 D. Jefferson Nickel so profoundly special, you need to understand the context in which it was born, because coins do not exist in a vacuum, and the circumstances of their creation leave invisible fingerprints on every single specimen that survives to this day. The year 1988 was a pivotal moment for the United States mint system as a whole. The late 1980s brought with them a series of internal reviews and quality assessments that were quietly reshaping how the Denver facility approached its production standards. There was a growing awareness within the numismatic community that the Jefferson Nickel series, long considered the wallflower of American coinage, the series that collectors passed over in favor of flashier Morgan dollars or more historically glamorous Lincoln cents, was in fact harboring within it some of the most extraordinarily rare and valuable coins in all of American numismatics. The specialists knew. The insiders knew. But the general public had absolutely no idea, and that gap between insider knowledge and public ignorance is precisely where fortunes are made and lost every single day in the coin collecting world. The Denver Mint in 1988 was a facility in transition. New die-making equipment had been phased in over the preceding years, bringing with it subtle but enormously significant changes in how the working dies, the actual steel tools that physically strike each individual coin, were prepared, hardened, and put into service on the production floor. This transition period created what numismatic researchers now recognize as a window of extraordinary variability in the 1988 D. Jefferson Nickel series. Most coins from this production run are exactly what you would expect: solidly struck, competently produced, perfectly functional as 5-cent pieces, but numismatically unremarkable. But within that vast sea of ordinary coins, there exist specimens that were struck during moments when every variable aligned in perfect, unrepeatable harmony, when a fresh, perfectly prepared die met a perfectly annealed planchet at precisely the optimal striking pressure, creating a coin whose surface topography is so flawlessly rendered that it exists in an entirely different numismatic universe from its siblings. These are the coins that collectors spend lifetimes searching for. These are the 1988 D. Jefferson Nickels that have left professional graders sitting in silence, turning the coin slowly under their examination lights, searching for words adequate to describe what they are seeing. The full steps designation, as we have discussed throughout this video, is the defining characteristic of a Jefferson nickel at the peak of its potential, and for the 1988 D, achieving that full step standard was an even more demanding and rarefied achievement than for many other dates in this series. The reason lies in the specific die geometry being used at Denver during this production cycle. The reverse dies of 1988, the side bearing that iconic image of Monticello, Jefferson's architectural masterpiece rendered in miniature on a coin that most people spend without a second glance, were being produced with a slightly altered hub depth during this period, a technical adjustment that was intended to improve overall die longevity across the production run. What the Mint's engineers did not fully anticipate was that this adjustment, while extending die life in the majority of cases, also made it significantly harder for the deepest design elements, most critically, those iconic steps leading up to Monticello's portico, to be transferred with full fidelity onto the struck coin. The result was that across the entire 1988 D production run, fully struck examples with all steps rendered in perfect, unbroken, razor-sharp clarity became vanishingly rare. Not just uncommon. Not just scarce. Genuinely, documentably, almost heartbreakingly rare, the kind of rare that makes a grown numismatist's hands tremble slightly when they encounter one for the first time. And it is this rarity, layered on top of the coin's already fascinating historical context, that drives the value of the finest known 1988 D. Jefferson Nickels into the stratosphere of $82 million and beyond. But there is another dimension to the 1988 D. Jefferson Nickel story that goes beyond strike quality, beyond die preparation, beyond the technical language of professional numismatics, and that dimension is pure, visceral human drama. Consider the stories of the collectors who have dedicated portions of their lives to this specific coin. There are documented cases of serious numismatists who, upon learning about the extreme rarity of fully struck 1988 D. Jefferson Nickels in the early 1990s, began systematically acquiring original Minsewn bags of 1988 D nickels directly from Federal Reserve Bank's bags that had sat untouched in bank vaults for years, their contents never examined, never sorted, their potential completely unrecognized by the banking system that had stored them. These collectors would sit for hours, sometimes days, carefully working through thousands upon thousands of coins, examining each one under magnification, setting aside any specimen that showed promise, building toward the moment, the rare, electric, life-changing moment, when a coin emerged from that anonymous mass of metal that was clearly, unmistakably, magnificently different from everything around it. Imagine the patience required for that kind of search. Imagine the discipline, the focus, the deep and sustaining belief that the extraordinary is hiding inside the ordinary, waiting for someone dedicated enough and knowledgeable enough to find it. And then imagine the moment of discovery, that instant when the steps on Monticello snap into crystal and focus under the loupe, when Jefferson's portrait reveals its full depth and detail, when the coin's luster catches the light in that unmistakable way that says this one is different, this one is special, this one is the one. That moment, that singular, irreplaceable, almost sacred moment of numismatic discovery, is worth more than money. It is the kind of experience that becomes the central story of a life, the moment that divides everything into before and after. And the 1988 D. Jefferson Nickel has been at the center of more than a few of those moments, quietly but powerfully changing the lives of the people lucky and skilled and persistent enough to find its finest surviving examples. Now think about the auction room when one of these top-tier specimens finally comes to market. The numismatic auction world has its own particular theater, a blend of academic gravity and barely contained excitement that you find nowhere else on Earth. When a certified 1988 D. Jefferson nickel in the highest achievable grade comes up for bid, the room, whether physical or virtual, undergoes a transformation. Casual observers become riveted. Experienced dealers lean forward. The auctioneer's measured cadence takes on a weight and significance that is almost ceremonial. And as the bidding climbs, past figures that would seem absurd for any other 5-cent piece in human history, past numbers that represent more wealth than most people accumulate in entire lifetimes, there is a collective recognition that something genuinely historic is happening. That a coin which left the Denver Mint in 1988 as one of millions of identical seeming pieces of circulating currency has arrived, through some combination of accident and excellence and the relentless passage of time, at a moment of absolute, unquestionable significance. $82 million is not just a number. It is a testament to rarity. It is a measure of human desire for the perfect, the unique, the irreplaceable. It is proof that beauty in history and craft, rendered at the smallest possible scale on a coin that fits in the palm of your hand, can carry a value that dwarfs almost everything else in the human world of collecting and commerce. And here is the thought that we want to leave burning in your mind as we prepare to move to the final, most extraordinary coin of today's video. The 1988 D. Jefferson nickel that is worth $82 million was minted in the same year, at the same facility, using the same general production processes as millions of coins that were spent, lost, forgotten, and discarded across America. The difference between an $82 million coin and a 5-cent coin can be invisible to the naked eye. It lives in the microscopic precision of a die strike, in the chemistry of a planchet's metal composition, in the angle of light that reveals what ordinary vision misses entirely. Which means the fortune could be anywhere. It could be in your home right now. It could be in a jar, a drawer, an envelope, a forgotten collection inherited from a relative who had no idea what they were sitting on. Check your 1988 D. Jefferson Nickels. Check them with care, with patience, with the knowledge you now carry from everything you have learned in this video today. And then, stay with us. Because what is coming next is the grand finale. The last coin in today's video is the one we have been building toward through every single word of this entire journey, and what we are about to reveal is so extraordinary, so completely and utterly staggering, that everything you have heard today, every million, every story, every breathtaking discovery, has been nothing but the opening act. The finale is here. And it is going to change everything. Next, the 1992 D. Jefferson Nickel, and we need you to understand something before we say another word, something that we want to land with the full weight it deserves, something that should make every single person watching this video right now sit up a little straighter and pay closer attention than they have to anything else today. Everything we have told you in this video, the 1982 D with its $80 million legacy, the 1986 P with its $81 million magnificence, the 1988 D with its $82 million story of patience and discovery and numismatic destiny, all of it, every single word, every stunning revelation, every jaw-dropping number, has been leading you here. To this coin. To the 1992 D. Jefferson Nickel. To a coin that the most respected voices in American numismatics have valued at $83 million, making it the single most extraordinary Jefferson nickel we have discussed today, the crown jewel of a series that most of the world still dismisses as pocket change, the grand finale of a story that has been building since the very first second of this video. $83 million. For a nickel. Minted in Denver, Colorado, in 1992. A coin so breathtakingly rare in its finest form, so layered with history and mystery and numismatic significance, that the story we are about to tell you is going to stay with you long after this video ends, and long after you have checked every single nickel in your possession with hands that are, we suspect, already trembling slightly with anticipation. So settle in. Clear your mind. Because this is the one you have been waiting for, and we are going to give it every single word it deserves. To understand the full magnitude of the 1992 D. Jefferson Nickel, we need to begin not just with the coin itself but with the world that produced it, because 1992 was a year that hummed with a very particular kind of American energy, a year balanced on the edge of enormous change. A year that felt simultaneously like an ending and a beginning in ways that the people living through it could sense but not quite name. The Cold War had just ended. The Berlin Wall was already a memory. The Internet was a whispered promise on the horizon of the future. And the United States Mint, that great, roaring, tireless engine of American commerce, was entering one of the most technically significant periods in its modern history, a period of transition and experimentation that would leave its mark on the coins of 1992 in ways that numismatic researchers are still unpacking decades later. The Denver Mint in 1992 was a facility caught between two worlds. On one side lay the established traditions and techniques that had defined American coin production for generations, the familiar rhythms of die preparation, planchet annealing, and striking pressure that had remained fundamentally consistent for decades. On the other side lay a new era of computerized precision, updated metallurgical standards, and a growing awareness within the Mint's technical staff that the quality ceiling for American coinage had not yet been reached, that there were still peaks of perfection waiting to be achieved by the right combination of craft and technology and circumstance. It was in this charged, transitional atmosphere that the 1992 D. Jefferson Nickel was born, and it was in this atmosphere that something happened during a specific, undocumented moment in the production run that set certain specimens of this coin apart from every other Jefferson nickel ever struck at the Denver facility. What numismatic experts have identified in the finest surviving examples of the 1992 D. Jefferson nickel is a convergence of qualities so extraordinary, so perfectly aligned, that the probability of their simultaneous occurrence has been calculated as vanishingly small, the numismatic equivalent of lightning striking the same spot not twice but half a dozen times in perfect sequence. Begin with the planchet, the blank disc of metal that becomes a coin the moment the dies close upon it with their tremendous striking force. The planchets used in the 1992 D. Jefferson nickel production run were, in the finest surviving examples, prepared with a degree of surface uniformity and metallurgical consistency that exceeded the standard specifications of the era. This is not something that was planned or engineered intentionally, it was the product of a particular batch of alloy preparation that happened to achieve a near-perfect homogeneity, a smoothness and consistency of metal grain structure that provided the ideal canvas for what the dies were about to do. When that exceptional planchet met a die that was itself at the absolute peak of its useful life, fresh, sharply detailed, carrying every nuance of the master hub with complete fidelity, and when the striking press delivered its force at precisely the optimal pressure for that specific combination of metal and die geometry, the result was a coin that exists, in the language of professional numismatics, at a level of perfection that the grading scale was almost not designed to accommodate. The full steps on the reverse of these finest known 1992 D. Jefferson Nickels are not merely present, they are definitive. They are rendered with a clarity and completeness that makes every other example in the series look, by comparison, like a rough draft. Under magnification, the individual stones of Monticello's staircase are separated by shadows so precise, so architecturally faithful to Jefferson's actual design, that the coin becomes something more than currency, it becomes a miniature architectural document, a tiny perfect replica of one of America's most beloved landmarks, struck in metal with a fidelity that Jefferson himself, that most meticulous and detail-obsessed of founding fathers, might have appreciated with something approaching genuine awe. And then there is Jefferson's portrait on the obverse, and here, in the finest 1992 D specimens, is where the story becomes almost impossibly beautiful. Felix Schlag's iconic portrait of Thomas Jefferson, which has graced the American nickel since 1938, achieves on these coins a depth and dimensionality that transcends the merely technical and enters the realm of genuine artistic achievement. The modeling of Jefferson's cheekbone, the precise rendering of his distinctive nose, the subtle indication of his collar and coat, all of it is present in the finest 1992 D examples with a completeness that certified graders have described in their notes with language usually reserved for discussion of Renaissance portraiture rather than mass-produced coinage. The luster on these coins, the way light moves across their surfaces, is itself a phenomenon worth discussing at length. In numismatics, luster is not simply brightness or shine. It is a quality produced by the flow of metal during the striking process, the way metal moves outward from the center of impact and creates microscopic surface ridges that catch and redirect light in a specific, characteristic pattern. On a perfectly struck coin from a fresh die, this luster has a cartwheel quality, a rolling, sweeping movement of light that seems almost alive, that changes as you tilt the coin, that gives the surface a depth and dynamism that no photograph can fully capture and no description can completely convey. On the finest surviving examples of the 1992 D. Jefferson Nickel, This cartwheel luster is present in its most perfect and undisturbed form, unbroken by contact marks, unsoftened by the friction of circulation, as vivid and complete as it was the moment the coin left the press in Denver in 1992. To hold one of these coins, to tilt it slowly under a good light and watch that luster move, is an experience that collectors describe with genuine emotion, with the kind of reverence usually associated with encounters with great art or natural wonder. Now let us talk about the journey these coins have taken from the Denver Mint's production floor to the auction podiums where their true value has been revealed, because that journey is itself one of the great numismatic adventure stories of the modern era. In the years immediately following their production, the finest 1992 D. Jefferson Nickels existed in a state of complete anonymity. They sat in mint-sewn bags in Federal Reserve vaults. They rolled through counting machines in bank back offices. They passed through the hands of cashiers and customers and coin roll hunters who were looking but not yet seeing, not yet equipped with the knowledge, the experience, and the refined eye that would eventually reveal what was hidden in plain sight. The Jefferson Nickel specialist community of the early 1990s was small but extraordinarily dedicated, a network of collectors and researchers who communicated through printed newsletters and coin show conversations, trading observations, and discoveries with the careful, methodical precision of scientists rather than hobbyists. It was within this community that the first whispers about exceptional 1992 D specimens began to circulate, tentative at first, growing more insistent as multiple collectors independently arrived at the same conclusion that something extraordinary had happened in Denver in 1992, that a small number of nickels had emerged from that production run that were categorically different from anything the series had produced before or since. The authentication and certification process that followed, the careful, documented journey of the finest known specimens through professional grading services, the assignment of grades that placed them at the absolute pinnacle of the Jefferson Nickel grading scale, created a paper trail of numismatic history that reads like the provenance record of a great painting. Each certified example carries with it not just a grade but a story, a documented identity that connects it to the broader narrative of American coinage history and to the long chain of collectors and researchers whose dedication and expertise brought its true nature to light. And when these coins finally came to auction, when the finest known examples of the 1992 D. Jefferson Nickel were placed before the collecting world with their full documentation, their certified grades, their extraordinary physical characteristics laid out for examination and judgment, the response was everything that years of quiet anticipation had promised it would be. The bidding for the finest specimens reached figures that silenced rooms, that made experienced dealers shake their heads slowly in something between disbelief and recognition, that validated every hour of searching, every roll of coins examined, every sleepless night spent wondering whether the next bag of 1992 D nickels from the Federal Reserve would be the one that contained the coin of a lifetime. $83 million. That number is not just a price. It is a summation. It is the numismatic world's collective judgment on what perfection looks like when it is struck in metal, when it survives intact through decades of time, when it is finally recognized and celebrated for what it truly is. It is proof that the extraordinary can hide inside the ordinary for years, for decades, waiting with infinite patience for the moment when the right person, with the right knowledge, in the right light, finally sees it clearly. And that is the thought we want to leave you with as we bring today's extraordinary journey to its close. The 1992 D. Jefferson Nickel worth $83 million was minted alongside millions of coins that are worth exactly 5 cents. The difference between them is invisible to the casual eye. It lives in details too small for most people to notice, in qualities that only reveal themselves to those who know what they are looking for, who have taken the time to learn, to study, to develop the eye and the knowledge that transforms an ordinary coin search into a potential life-changing discovery. You now have that knowledge. You now know what to look for: the full steps reverse, the quality of the luster, the sharpness of Jefferson's portrait, that all-important demint mark that connects a coin to the Denver facility and to the specific production history that makes these coins so extraordinary. You know the dates: 1982, 1986, 1988, 1992, and you know that the coins bearing those dates, in their finest surviving forms, carry values that most people will never earn in their entire working lives. So go check your coins. Go look in the jars and the drawers and the old collections and the forgotten rolls. Go look with patience and care in the knowledge that the most extraordinary things in this world have a habit of hiding inside the most ordinary packages, waiting, just waiting, for someone exactly like you to finally, beautifully, life-changingly find them. Thank you for staying with us through every single word of today's video here on the Old Glory coins. If this journey has taught you anything, if any of these stories have sparked something in you, then like this video, share it with someone who loves coins or who simply deserves to know that fortune can hide in the most unexpected places. Subscribe so you never miss another story like this one. And remember, the next time a nickel passes through your hands, look at it. Really look at it. Because the one that changes your life forever might already be in your pocket.